Welcome back. This is a brief presentation on getting some practice on working with variables, understanding how theory plays into it, and looking at some hypotheses. So first off, I want us to start thinking about some examples regarding what a variable is. So we can think of variables that we used in a research question quiz, or think about things that you're interested in. And we want to think about the various attributes of that variable. So you can say, my variable is protest participation. Some of the attributes could be never protested, protested one time, protested two or more times. And we see that the attributes there are just options that participants could use in that larger variable of protest participation. Then what is theory? Theory is a systematic explanation for the relationship between variables. So it's not just explaining one variable, it's really concerned with how do we explain that relationship between an x variable and a y variable? Or how does the literature explain the relationship between that x variable and that y variable? Importantly, theory does not only say that there is a relationship, but it says why that relationship exists. For example, if we're looking at the relationship between the x variable sex and the y variable income or wages, theory would say sex is related to wages, or x is related to y. But then it also says sex is related to wages because, and it gives a reason for why sex would be related to wages. We might think, as we've seen in much literature, that women with similar qualifications as men tend to earn less in similar jobs as men. So in that sense, sex, or an attribute of sex, is related to earning more or less. Theory says these are related and gives a reason why sex would be related to wages. Whereas a hypothesis is a little bit more specific. It's a testable statement about the relationship between specific attributes between these variables. A hypothesis says a specific category within sex is related to a specific outcome for wages. So, take our example, sex and wages. If we were trying to create a hypothesis out of this, we could say women earn less than men in the same jobs. So we say women earn lower wages. That is a category of the dependent variable. Here I've identified the difference between a directional and a non-directional hypothesis. A directional says women earn less than men. A non-directional hypothesis would be something like men's and women's earnings are different. So we're not saying men are earning more or less. We're saying men and women, if we look at their wages, they are different. In all of these examples, we're still homing in on that original theory that sex is related to wages or earnings. At the end of this, I would like to take a step back and think about some of the variables that interest you. Think about two variables that interest you and how they relate to one another. This is very similar to the research question quiz. Select two variables within that field or subfield and develop a theory about their relationship. I give the example of knowing that social ties or connections to other individuals are related to protest participation. And I look at the literature on social ties and protest participation. It says people who have friends or ties to people who are also protesters, the initial people will ultimately go out and participate in protest. There's a higher likelihood of going out to protest if you know that your friends or your family are going out to protest. So that's what the theory would say. Those are related to protest because of a connectedness to individuals. Then I want you to develop one hypothesis about that relationship. People with more friends who are protesting are more likely to go out and protest at least once. That would be a specific hypothesis given that I'm focusing on specific attributes of social ties, having friend protesters, and a specific attributes of the outcome. They are more likely to participate in higher numbers of protests. So I'd like you to work through this exercise for your own notes.